Hello, St. Peter's. Welcome back to our chapter book series. We're on week 14, and we are ready for chapters 11 and 12 of our chapter book, The World According to Humphrey. We just have 2 weeks left of this book, and that'll take us right up to just about Christmas. I know you're probably getting excited for Christmas, but we also still have quite a bit of work to do. I know I've been working hard here with some of our students, getting their schoolwork done, making sure we'll be ready to have a nice long Christmas break without the worry of having to make anything up. So keep working really hard. I'm so proud of you. I know it's tricky to do learning online all of the time. I know your teachers miss you. I miss you being here, but we could not be prouder of how hard you are working. So keep it up. That's awesome. My friends are here. They're proud of you too. And they can't wait until they can actually see you in person. So here we have Ralph, Magic Monkey. Joy is here with her jar of joy, of course. And Daisy's hanging out back there, just chilling. They're all sitting in my chair. So I had to sit on the floor. So you know what I decided to do? Kick off my shoes, get cozy on the floor, relax, sit back, and we'll hear the next 2 chapters of Humphrey. But let's think about what happened last time. So last week, Humphrey went to Miranda's house for the weekend, which he loves Miranda. He calls her Golden Miranda, and she cleans his cage the best. But what happened? She had a big dog, right? And he was scared of that dog, and that dog kept charging in. So he made a plan with a paperclip, and he defended himself. So if you haven't listened to that yet, go back and listen. It's really exciting. But then we also found out about a little bit of sad news about his classmate Garth, who'd been acting kind of mean to the other kids and even mean to Humphrey. But we found out it's because his mom is sick. So he's not allowed to take Humphrey home because there's too much going on at his house already with his mom being sick. So the teacher said she was going to try to figure out a way that he could get in there. And that's where we left off. So here we go. Chapters 11 and 12 of The World According to Humphrey by Betty G. Birney. Sit back and relax and have some fun. Here we go. Chapter 11 is called TV or Not TV. Wow, Friday was a great adventure because AJ took me on the school bus. It was noisy and smelly and very, very bumpy, and just about everyone in the bus wanted to get a good look at me, including the driver, Miss Victoria. It was exciting, almost too exciting because AJ couldn't hold my cage steady and I was slipping and sliding and bouncing until I was quite dizzy. Sorry, Humphrey, I'm trying to hold still, AJ told me as someone bumped his elbow and sent me sprawling across the floor of my cage. It's all right, I squeaked weakly. The bus led us off close to AJ's house. It was a 2-story old house with a big porch. As soon as I entered, I got a warm welcome from AJ's mom, his younger brother Ty, his little sister Dee Lee, and his baby brother Bo. Anthony James, introduce us to your little friend, his mom said, greeting us. Anthony James. Everyone at school called AJ by his initials, or just Age. This is Humphrey, he answered. Hello, Humphrey, said Mrs. Thomas. So, how was your day, Anthony? Wowsy. Garth kept shooting rubber bands at me. He won't leave me alone. But you two used to be friends, his mother said. Used to be, said AJ, until he turned into a jerk. Mom patted her son on the shoulder. Well, you've got the whole weekend to get over it. Now take Humphrey into the den and get him settled. Mrs. Brisbane called him Lower Your Voice, AJ, because AJ always talked extra loud in class. I soon noticed that everybody at AJ's house talked extra loud. They had to, because in the background, the TV was always blaring. Now, every house I've been in so far has had a TV. Even Ms. Mack had a TV, and I enjoyed some of the shows that I'd seen with her. There's one channel that has nothing but the most frightening shows about wild animals attacking one another. I mean wild, like tigers and bears and hippopotamuses. Gee, I hope that's not on our vocabulary test in the near future. Those shows make me appreciate the protection of a nice cage, as long as the lock doesn't quite lock. There's another channel that only has people in funny-looking clothes dancing and singing in very strange places. It makes me glad that I have a fur coat and don't have to figure out what to wear every day. Mostly I like the cartoon shows. Sometimes they have mice and rabbits and other interesting rodents, although I've never seen a hamster show yet. Anyway, the difference at the Thomas's house is that the television is on all the time. There's a TV on the table across from a big comfy couch and a big comfy chair, and someone's always sitting there watching. I know because they put my cage down on the floor next to the couch. I had a very good view of the TV. I couldn't always hear the TV, though, because AJ's mother had a radio in the kitchen, which was blaring most of the time while she cooked or did crossword puzzles or talked on the phone. No matter what she did, the radio was always on. When AJ's dad came home from work, he plopped down on the couch and watched TV while he played with the baby. Then AJ and Ty plugged in some video games and played while Dad watched. Dee listened to the radio with her mom and danced around the kitchen. When it was time for dinner, the whole family took plates and sat in the den so they could watch TV while they ate. Then they watched TV some more. They made popcorn and kept watching. Finally, the kids went to bed. The baby first, then Dee, and later Ty and AJ. After they were all in their rooms, Mr. and Mrs. Thomas kept watching TV and ate some ice cream. Later, Mrs. Thomas yawned loudly. "Oh, I've had it, Charlie. I'm going to bed, and I suggest you do too," she said. But Mr. Thomas just kept on watching, or at least he kept on sitting there until he fell asleep on the couch. I ended up watching the rest of the wrestling match without him. Unfortunately, the wrestler I was rooting for, Thor of Glore, lost. Finally, Mr. Thomas woke up, yawned, flicked off the TV, and went upstairs to bed. Peace at last. But the quiet only lasted about 10 minutes. Soon, Mom brought Bo downstairs and gave him a bottle while she watched TV. When Bo finally fell asleep, Mrs. Thomas yawned and flicked off the TV. Blessed relief. 5 minutes later, Mr. Thomas returned. "Sorry, hamster, can't sleep," he mumbled to me as he flicked on the remote. He watched and then dozed off again. But the TV stayed on, leaving me no choice but to watch a string of commercials for car waxes, weight-reducing programs, exercise machines, and red-hot harmonica classes. The combination of being nocturnal and being bombarded with sight and sound kept me wide awake. At the crack of dawn, Dee tiptoed into the room, dragging her doll by its hair, and switched to a cartoon show about princesses. She watched another show about cats and dogs. Scary. Then Mr. Thomas woke up and wanted to check some sports scores. Mrs. Thomas handed him the baby and his bottle, and soon the older boys switched over to video games and their parents watched them play. It was loud, 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 but the Thomases didn't seem to notice. "What do you want for breakfast?" Mom shouted. "What?" Dad shouted louder. "What do you want for breakfast?" Mom yelled. "Toaster waffles!" Dad yelled louder. "I can't hear the TV!" Ty hollered, turning up the volume. "Do you want juice?" Mom screamed. "Can't hear you!" Dad responded. "Oh, that is too noisy." And so it went. With each new question, the sound of the TV would be turned up higher and higher until it was possibly deafening. Then Mom switched on her radio. The Thomases were a perfectly nice family, but I could tell it was going to be a very long and noisy weekend, unless I came up with a plan. So I spun on my wheel for a while to help me think. And I thought and thought and thought some more. And then it came, the big idea. I probably would have come up with it sooner if I could have heard myself think. Around noon, the Thomases were all watching the football game on TV. Or rather, Mr. Thomas was watching the football game on TV while AJ and Ty shouted questions at him. Mrs. Thomas was in the kitchen listening to the radio and talking on the phone. Delee played peekaboo with the baby in the cozy chair. No one was watching me. So I carefully opened the lock that doesn't lock on my cage and made a quick exit. Naturally, no one could hear me skittering across the floor as I made my way around the outside of the room, over to the space behind the TV cabinet. Then, with great effort, I managed to pull out the plug of one of the most difficult feats of my life. The TV went silent, beautifully, blissfully, silently silent. So silent, I was afraid to move. I waited behind the cabinet, frozen. The Thomases stared at the TV screen as the picture slowly went dark. Ty, did you hit that remote? Mr. Thomas asked. No, it's under the table. Anthony, go turn that thing on again, Mr. Thomas said. AJ jumped up and hit the power button on the TV. Nothing happened. It's broken, he exclaimed. Mrs. Thomas rushed in from the kitchen. What happened? Mr. Thomas explained that the TV had gone off and they discussed how old it was, 5 years, whether it had a guarantee, no one knew, and if Mr. Thomas could fix it. He couldn't. Everything was fine and it went off, just like that. I guess we better take it in to get fixed, Mr. Thomas said. How long will it take? Delee asked in a whiny voice. I don't know, her dad replied. How much will it cost? Mrs. Thomas asked. Oh, yeah, her husband said. I forgot. We're a little low on funds right now. The baby began to cry. I thought the rest of the family might start crying too. Well, I get paid next Friday, Dad said. AJ jumped up and waved his hands. That's a whole week away. I'm going to Grandma's house. Her TV works, said Ty. Me too, Delee chimed in. Grandma's got her bridge club over there tonight, Mom said. I know, said Dad. Let's go to a movie. Do you know how much it costs to go to a movie? Mom asked. Besides, we can't take the baby. Oh. They whined and bickered for quite a while. They got so loud I managed to scamper back to my cage unnoticed. Then I guess I dozed off. Remember, I hardly had a wink of sleep since I'd arrived. The bickering was a nice soothing background after all that racket. I was only half asleep when the squabbling changed. But there's nothing to do, Delee whined. Her father chuckled. Nothing to do, girl. My brothers and I used to spend weekends at my grandma's house, and she never had a TV. Wouldn't allow it. What did you do? AJ asked. Oh, we were busy every minute, he recalled. We played cards and board games and word games, and we dug in her garden and played tag. He chuckled again. A lot of times we just sat on the porch and talked. My grandma, she could talk. What did you talk about? Ty wondered. Oh, she'd tell us stories about her growing up, about ghosts and funny things, like the time her uncle was walking in his sleep and went to church in his pajamas. Mrs. Thomas gasped. Oh, go on now, Charlie. I'm just telling you what she told us. He woke up in the middle of the service, looked down, and there he was in his blue and white striped pajamas. Could you imagine going to church in her pajamas? Oh my goodness. I let out a squeak of surprise and all the kids giggled. Then Mrs. Thomas told a story about a girl in her class who came to school in her slippers by accident one day. Yes, the fuzzy kind, she explained with a big smile. They talked and talked, and Dad got out some cards, and they played a game called Crazy Eights and another one called Pig, where they put their fingers on their noses and laughed like hyenas. When Bo fussed, they took turns jiggling him on their knees. After a while, Mrs. Thomas gasped, "Oh, goodness sakes, it's an hour past your bedtimes." The children all groaned and asked if they could play cards tomorrow, and in a few minutes, all of the Thomases had gone to bed, and it was quiet, quiet, quiet for the first time since I'd arrived. Tip 11. Be careful. If set free, hamsters are experts at disappearing in a room. That is from the Guide to the Care and Feeding of Hamsters by Dr. Harvey H. Hammer. That we get a little tip after every chapter. All right, let's read chapter 12. I wonder how this weekend is going to end up. Chapter 12 is called Peace Breaks Out. Now, do you think they handled it well so far? At first, they were really crabby about missing TV, but then they found some amazing things to do. They told great stories. They found out things about their family they didn't know, and they were all playing cards together. So for so long, they lost track of time. Maybe it was a blessing in disguise. Here we go. Chapter 12, Peace Breaks Out. Early in the morning, Ty, Dealey, and AJ raced downstairs and played Crazy Eights. Later, they ran outside and threw a football around the yard. The Thomases were having breakfast with Bo when the phone rang. Mr. Thomas talked for a few minutes, mostly saying, "That's fine." When he hung up, he told Mrs. Thomas, "We're going to have a visitor, but don't tell Anthony James." Ooh, a mystery. I like mysteries because they're fun to solve. Then again, I don't like mysteries because I don't like not knowing what's going on. So I waited and waited. A few hours later, the doorbell rang. The visitor turned out to be Garth Tugwell with his father. "Oh, I really appreciate this," Mr. Tugwell told the Thomases. "It was Mrs. Brisbane's idea. Since Garth can't have Humphrey at our house right now, she suggested that he could help AJ take care of him over here." Sounds like Mrs. Brisbane, as if I'm trouble to take care of. But Garth had been crying because he couldn't have me. So maybe she was trying to be nice. After Mr. Tugwell left, Mr. Thomas called AJ in. AJ ran into the room and practically backed out again when he saw Garth. "We have a guest," said Mr. Thomas. "Shake hands, Anthony. Garth is here to help you take care of Humphrey." AJ and Garth reluctantly shook hands. "How come?" asked AJ. Garth shrugged his shoulders. "Miss Brisbane said to." "Well, come on. We'll clean his cage and get it over with," AJ said. The boys didn't talk much while they cleaned the cage, but they started giggling when they cleaned up my potty corner. I don't know why that makes everybody giggle. After they stopped giggling, they started talking and kidding around. They decided to let me out of the cage so they took a set of old blocks from Delee's room and built me a huge maze. Oh, I love mazes. When we were all tired of that game, AJ offered to teach Garth to play Crazy Eights, and then Ty and Delee joined them in a game of Go Fish. Nobody mentioned the TV. Nobody shot any rubber bands. Later in the afternoon, the kids were all outside playing football. I was fast asleep until Mrs. Thomas came into the den with a broom and started sweeping. A minute later, Mr. Thomas entered. "What are you doing, hon?" "What does it look like? I'm sweeping. You know, all the snacking we do in here makes a real mess on the floor," she said. "Bo's asleep?" her husband asked. "Uh-huh." Mr. Thomas walked over to his wife and took the broom away from her. "Then you sit down and rest a spell, hun. I'll sweep. Go on, don't argue." Mrs. Thomas smiled and thanked him and sat down on the couch. Mr. Thomas swept all around the outside of the room, even behind the TV. Uh-oh. When he got there, he stopped sweeping and leaned down. "Well, I'll be," he muttered. "What's wrong?" asked Mrs. Thomas. "The TV's unplugged," he said. "It's unplugged." He came out from behind the TV, plug in hand, and a very puzzled look on his face. "But It couldn't have just come unplugged while we were sitting there watching. I mean, a plug doesn't just fall out, he said. Plug it in, see if it works, his wife told him. Well, you guessed it. The TV came on as bright and loud as ever. I don't get it, Mr. Thomas muttered. But at least we don't have to pay to get it fixed. Mrs. Thomas stared at the screen for a few seconds, then glanced out the window at the kids playing happily outside. Charlie, what do you say we keep it unplugged for a couple more days? She asked. We just won't tell the kids. Mr. Thomas grinned. Then he bent down and unplugged the TV. Couldn't hurt, he said. He put down the broom and sat on the couch near his wife, and the two of them just sat there in the den, giggling like Stop Giggling Gail. Suddenly, Mr. Thomas looked over at me. You don't mind a little peace and quiet, do you, Humphrey? No, I squeaked, and I promptly fell asleep. Things were a lot better when A.J. Garth and I returned to room 26. No rubber bands flew through the air. Garth didn't trip anybody or make fun of anybody. That meant Gail didn't get in trouble for giggling. Heidi didn't get in trouble for speaking out without raising her hand because she wasn't trying to tell Mrs. Brisbane what Garth had done. But the best change was Saya, who did raise her hand every single day. One day she raised her hand to volunteer to stay in during recess to clean the chalkboard. Miranda raised her hand too, and Mrs. Brisbane chose them both. Girls, I think I can trust you to stay here while I run this report down to the principal's office, Mrs. Brisbane told them. Of course she could trust them. Once the girls were alone, they began to talk. I really like your singing, Miranda told Saya. Thanks. My mom and I are going to a musical version of Cinderella over at the college this weekend, Miranda continued. We have an extra ticket. Would you like to come with us? My mom will pick you up. Saya quickly turned to face Miranda. Oh, yes. I have not been to a play before. Miranda grinned. Good. I'll have my mom call your mom. Suddenly, Saya's face fell. Oh, better not. She's so busy. Give me your number and I'll have my father call your mother. Saya watched Miranda's reaction carefully. So did I. Cool. That was it. Miranda jotted down her number and Saya looked greatly relieved. I knew that Miranda's mother didn't care how well Saya's mother spoke English. Maybe now Saya would figure that out too. Another great thing that happened was that Mrs. Brisbane started reading a book out loud to the class. Sometimes I doze right through these sessions, but this time she picked out a really good book. When she announced that it was about a mouse, Gail giggled. What did she say? Art whispered to Richie. Pay attention, Art, Mrs. Brisbane said. It's about a mouse. Several of the boys groaned. Baby stuff, one of them muttered. We'll see, Mrs. Brisbane told them. She started to read, and oh, what a tale it was. All about mice no bigger than I am, who were great warriors. I was longing to put on some armor myself by the time she stopped reading. Continued tomorrow, she announced as she stuck a bookmark in place and closed the book. Tomorrow? That woman truly has a mean streak. She proved it again and again. I would have sneaked out of my cage at night to finish the book, but she's so mean she stuck it in her desk drawer. The one she locks with a key. Grrr. The weekend came around quickly, though, and I went home with Richie. I'm still not quite sure how many people actually live in the Rinaldi's house because there are always so many people coming and going. Aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, neighbors. One meal seemed to flow right into the next, and Richie's mom was very generous with treats. I'll tell you one thing, you could never be lonely or hungry at the Rinaldi's house. On Sunday afternoon, guess who showed up? Remember Richie's uncle? That's right, Aldo Amato. This time my buddy Aldo was not lonely because he brought his girlfriend, Maria, to meet the family. Oh, she was a very nice lady who wore her long hair pulled up high on her head. She was dressed in bright red from head to toe, red earrings, red sweater, red skirt, and red shoes. I think red is a very happy color. I think Maria is a very happy person, especially when she's with Aldo. All the Rinaldis made a big fuss over Maria and praised the bread and cookies she brought from the bakery where she worked. After all the commotion of their arrival died down, I heard Aldo tell Maria, "Now, there's someone really important I want you to meet." And he introduced her to me. "Believe it or not, Humphrey is one of my best friends," he told her. "And he was the very first friend I told about you." "Then I am honored to meet you, Humphrey," Maria said, smiling down at me. "The pleasure is all mine," I squeaked. "See, he likes you," said Aldo. And indeed I did. The world seemed like a pretty nice place for a handsome young hamster like me, I can tell you. I was sitting on top of the world when I returned to room 26 on Monday. But I just about toppled off when Mrs. Brisbane made an alarming announcement. "Class, as you know, this will be a short week, due to Thanksgiving," she said. "And that means Humphrey will need a home for 4 days instead of 2. Now, who wants to volunteer?" You won't believe what I am going to say. Not one hand went up. I actually fell off my wheel. Mrs. Brisbane was surprised too. "No one?" she asked. "Heidi, didn't you want to take Humphrey home?" "Oh, yes, but we're going to my grandma's house for Thanksgiving," she explained. "Art, didn't you ask for Humphrey last week?" Mrs. Brisbane asked. "Yes, but we're having all my relatives for Thanksgiving, and my mom says it wouldn't be a good time," Art explained. And so it went. Every single classmate had big plans for Thanksgiving. Plans that didn't include having an extra hamster around. I was worried. I didn't want to spend 4 days alone in room 26. I worried all day Monday. I worried all day Tuesday. I worried even more all day Wednesday. At the end of the day, Principal Morales stopped by to give Mrs. Brisbane an envelope. I think it was her paycheck because she was especially glad to see him. "I have a huge favor to ask," she said. "Sure, Sue, what is it?" asked Principal Morales. He wore a tie with little turkeys all over it. "Could you possibly take Humphrey for the weekend?" I had my paws crossed that he say yes, but Principal Morales didn't even smile. "Oh, Sue, I'd love to, but we're going out of town for the holiday," he told her. "Another time, I'd love to." Another time wouldn't matter. I needed a place to go now. After the principal left, Mrs. Brisbane sighed and began gathering up papers. Then she turned to me. "Well, Humphrey, it looks like you're going home with me for Thanksgiving," she said grimly. My fate was sealed. I was going to the home of the woman who had once vowed to get rid of me for 4 whole days. And frankly, I was worried I'd never come back. The end of chapter 12. Our tip number 12 is, if you must leave your hamster with a caretaker, make sure that it is someone you know and trust. From the Guide to Care and Feeding of Hamsters by Dr. Harvey H. Hammer. And that's where we're going to stop. Oh boy, well, he had 2 really good weekends, right? He taught the Thomas family how to have some family time without the TV. And then he had fun with Aldo's family and the Rinaldis because his nephew's in the class, and he met his girlfriend. Now he's going with Mrs. Brisbane. I don't know. Don't you think that was really special when Miranda asked Saya to go to the show with her? Saya made a new friend. She didn't think she had any friends in that class. That is a great way to spread some joy, to make a new friend. But we're going to find out how we're going to spread some joy today. What do you say, Joy? I'm going to roll it up. Let's see what it's going to be today. Well, this is perfect because they were just talking about Thanksgiving. We're getting ready for Christmas. We know our parents are working so hard. Guess what it says? Thank your parents. What a great way to spread joy in your own house. Right there. And it's so easy to do. Run up to them, give them a great big hug and say, Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thanks for all you do. Thanks for taking care of us. Thanks for helping us with our homework. Thanks for making us dinner. Thanks for washing our clothes. Thanks for making sure we have a warm, safe home and a wonderful family to come home to. Thank your parents. I'm going to thank my mom as soon as I get home today. How about that? All right, boys and girls, I hope you enjoyed that. Next week is the conclusion of the world according to Humphrey, and I think it just might take us right up to Christmas, just like we will be. So enjoy this gorgeous weather. I hope it lasts a little bit for the weekend. I hope you get a chance to go outside and play. You can even save this video till it's a rainy day, right? Right, guys? Let's go and play. We're going to go play, but we're also going to go spread some joy. Have a great week, boys and girls. I'll see you again next Friday. Go spread your joy.